I can. I have still outstanding Mark and Julie. Um, I don't know, my thing's not listing them like they normally do, but if anybody else sees them or if they're on there, please let me know. Okay, well, there's 5 of us on the team, so it is 4:03. I'll hand it off to you, Steve.
All right. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have the agenda up, but if I'm not mistaken, the first item on the agenda is to consider, review, and approve the minutes of the last meeting. I'm recalling the date. I think it was the 25th. Nancy, would you mind screen sharing the agenda until we get to a discussion item? I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir. We're getting the minutes up there for you right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Or the agenda, excuse me.
All right, so open to committee comments on the meeting minutes that were circulated. Have you had a time to review and consider any proposed changes?
I hate to be fussy, and it doesn't have to be for this one, but maybe the 3A, it states there, placed to a vote with committee caveats. We actually have submitted that to council. If we could change that for the next meeting, or maybe put the date that it went to council, just for record purposes.
You could do that, Denise.
All right.
Do you want,
Sorry.
do you want that on this meeting? Do you want to, we can update it for this meeting and then send it back out for everyone for approval?
I don't think it's worth that, Nance.
No worry, thanks.
Hearing no additional comments.
I think Patrick had one, Denise, sorry.
That's okay.
I did not, sorry.
No worries. Just a kind of a point of order. Who's officially taking minutes for the meetings?
Hi, Chairman Isabel. I will.
All right, thank you, Dara. Really appreciate that. All right, so hearing no other comments or changes to the minutes, can I hear a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Patrick, thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Is that you, Julie? I didn't see.
Sir.
Okay, thank you. And with the motion and a second in place, is there any further discussion? All right, let's take a quick vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
thank you, Julie. And any opposed, please say nay. All right, unanimous vote, minutes are approved. Standing agenda item number 2, comments from Mayor Cole. Kevin, if you've got any thoughts or comments or developments to share, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, just real quick. I'll be on for a little while, but I'm at the house today. We got a generator company coming to take a look at a whole home generator. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago spurred that on, but so I'll duck out at about 5 for that appointment. But guys are doing a great job. I know there may be some struggle still trying to get what we need for the 3230 plan and have that deep discussion. Nancy, I'd like to see between your staff and finance, let's make sure we get what we can as soon as we can. So the committee doesn't get bogged down with that. Council's looking for them for some guidance on what and how and what to do. moving forward with that. So let's make sure that we do get that to them as soon as possible. Also, I do want to make sure, I guess and I'm not sure where it's at on the agenda, but just talking through with meters and those types of things, that is part of infrastructure. So it is covered under scope. Uh, when we talk about infrastructure and that last, I guess that last scope number 4, as you guys contemplate that. Steve, you and I can probably talk offline. I think there's a way that the committee and members of the committee can be involved in that and get their thoughts on the table with that without necessarily bogging down and getting caught up with a lot of committee time. I think that can be done in a way and do some deep dive into the meters. So that box gets checked. I think it's important for me, and I think it's important for the city as well as the community to know that if there is an issue with meters, then we uncover it. If there's not, we have confirmed that it's not. And I think we have some expertise on this committee to do that and welcome that. So, but again, I think we can do that in a separate fashion and still accomplish what the committee is looking to do. So let's talk offline on how we can do that, Steve. I don't want to bog down the committee meeting with that today. So
Thanks for your
keep up the good
comments.
work. Okay.
Thanks for your comments, Mayor. Just in response to that, there were a few emails sent around by committee members over the course of the last week, and then a few side conversations as well. So I want to make a couple of comments for the record, if you don't mind, in my position as a committee member, not speaking on behalf of consensus, but I know that there are committee members that share some of this. The time frame that it has passed between getting information about 3230 and really getting answers to some what we think should be simple and practical questions is a bit concerning, albeit we've been through the freeze and the upheaval that caused, obviously. John's McCarter's departure from the city is another cause there to this, but the urgency of this item was communicated to us by the council. You, of course, in turn asked us to prioritize that. And I think having a clear response on those questions, and I think our record speaks for itself in terms of some of the questions that Patrick had put on the table, specifically getting a clear and concise response on that will be really important. And I raise that point because at least in my perspective as a committee member, we did not get the answers that we hoped for on the overview of the AMI project last week. We walked away from that without a clear understanding of key dates, milestone dates, deliverables by those dates, resources that are involved, and the scope and scale of that project, so to speak. It seemed as if we heard about a portion of that project in Mr. Upton's scope. Nancy, again, with all due respect to your role in that project, it still is not clear to me who's in charge, how decisions will be made, what preparation and planning went into the project in general, and comprehensively how it's going to be delivered. And again, given all of the affiliations with that project, with the committee work, I want to make sure that that's something that's clearly communicated back to city council and accordingly to staff through you as the liaison, Kevin. Because some of us felt as though you recall in the council meeting when one of the council members asked, is there a great conspiracy here that's believed by the committee? I'm not suggesting there's a conspiracy. I'm suggesting there's a continued concern that straight answers and straight questions are not being connected. And I'd like to try to make some progress on that for myself to feel like I'm fulfilling my obligations as a committee member.
Noted, and let me push. That's part of being the liaison here and getting the committee what they need, getting the answers that you need, and certainly getting size, scope, project milestones, all of that delivered to you. Because again, I think council's looking for some very valuable input from this committee, and if you're not getting the information, then it's hard to do that. So I will push on my end to get that.
All right, thanks. Again, appreciate your comments. On the timeline for this meeting, I neglected to mention that I also have a hard out at about 5:25 myself. So again, if anybody else has similar schedule conflicts, please just let us know in the beginning, and we'll do our best to work around it. And I appreciate that, and I apologize for having to step out just a few minutes early.
Mine's at about 5:55. I need to jump on another call at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, with that said, we have maintained item 3 on the agenda simply for purposes of revisiting those items as needed. We're going to move down to item 4, but I first want to mention that in the context of item 4, we've got a bit of a presentation that committee member Ralph has prepared for the benefit of the committee, so that we can understand kind of the interconnection of metering and the billing process. And Denise, if you think it's a good idea to kind of move to Ralph's presentation now, we can do that, or we can table it until we have discussion on some of the other recommendation items. I'm sorry, Nancy, I said item 4. Item 3B is what I meant to reference. We can move to item 3B and kind of move down those recommendations. What do you think, Denise?
I think as long as we have everybody present, let's turn it over to Ralph and spend 30, 40 minutes. At the most, Ralph's prepared to do a 30-minute. So if we could do that while we have everybody present, I think that would be helpful.
All right, great. All right, so we're moving to item 3B sub bullet 2 under on your agenda, recommendation 8, which is implement a streamlined meter to cash process. And that process obviously begins with the meter. And there have been several concerns and experiences shared by committee members regarding the meters. And we have asked Ralph to prepare, with his experience, a few thoughts on observations of citizen experiences with the meters, and would ask Ralph to say a few words on that. I think we're budgeting this conversation for about 30 minutes. Ralph, is that comfortable for you?
Yeah, no problem. If I can make sure I can figure out how to do this, share entire screen, that's what I want to do.
Josh, I don't know if that's a permission for you or whatever, but I think Ralph's got some slides.
Ralph, you have presenter privileges right now, so you should be able to share.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can get this. Share entire screen. I won't it let me. There we go. Y'all see my screen now? Yeah. You see this?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let me just kind of share. This is kind of, I've been looking at from a technical standpoint, a number of things. And it's not directly related to billing, but it is in terms of the input to the billing process. So, what I wanted to just discuss is there's some initial technical things I'd like to talk about, and it really come down to Pearland, do we have a problem? This is kind of what I want to cover as an agenda, is, to present to y'all and review with the staff some of the generated analysis, in particular opposite the high bills. And then I'd like to discuss a little bit about community user perceptions and the social media feedback that we've had from various things, in particular the Facebook group that is primarily focused with the Pearland water billing. And it's a good stethoscope listening point to the community, I think, recognizing that people that typically apply or make comments are the more vocal, active kind of personalities, as opposed to what normal, the regular population may be. So, it's not my point, I guess, is a biased sample, and we have to recognize that. And then I'd like to discuss and reach agreement as to if a problem potentially may exist. And that's really what I'm trying to get accomplished today, and see if we can get an agreement. And then, based on that, I'd like to kind of give you a background of what I do and what skill set I bring to the table, which I think you're going to find helpful. And then with that, I kind of give you a little review and a look ahead of what potential future actions may look like. I've done a lot of work already, free. And my point to make out of that is typically I'm from a mentoring when I was doing day-to-day consulting. I'm semi-retired, more retired than working. The actions that I've been taking are pretty much from a normal work process that I do. With that, here is the one plot from the 2 months data analysis of the high bills that was generated for November and December. And I hope y'all remember this, because this is really interesting from a standpoint of data. Is that for all, there was 171 accounts that had their bill double or more. And this is the Pareto chart, the number of accounts by buckets, bins, in terms of where there was an increase. And I went through that and looked at it, and there's 65 residential accounts and there's 26 commercial accounts that basically saw an increase in bill greater than $150, or $150 or higher. But important to this is a couple of things. One, it shows where the top 25 account users are in terms of total accounts. And then just as important, it shows that there's a substantial number that saw increases of anywhere from $300–400, and there's one person that saw it at $3,075 in a bin. And you have to ask the question, how can you understand or appreciate an increase of $3,075? Now, I would concur with staff that it is a relatively small fraction of the accounts. And based upon what I've seen on my own bill, and also what's been reported out of Facebook and for other people, in particular, Jimmy Davis has a number of people that he's went and looked at their meters and got their profiles and looked at it. It is not continuous. This is a random. I will use that word hesitantly, because there may be a set of parameters that line up that causes the issue, and that actually may be repeatable if we can get the conditions correct. But there's something going on by my analysis. Now, I'll ask the question: does that seem like there is a problem here? Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Ralph, I have a question.
Sure.
On the 171 accounts, is this data driven by data from the city, or this is data driven by people that complained about their bills or didn't have? This is the city's data as reported to us in that report 3 meetings ago. Right. Okay.
This is their slide. This came out of the financial and audit that was done for November, December.
That's what I thought. So my question is, out of these accounts here, have any of these been labeled as there was a reason for it? Somebody filled up a pond, a pool, or something to that effect with the city?
I don't know. But the point I want to point out is, from a data analysis meter validation standpoint, these clearly are flagged, would be or should be flagged. Let's put it that way. And we've got, and I'm going to continue.
Right.
Facebook.
Ralph, before you continue, I mean, you asked for feedback. So my first thought in looking at this set of data goes to the percentage of total meters. If you assume that every one of these reads is artificially high, then we're making assumption essentially as to potentially the failure rate, or to some degree, an outside of control or outside of control rate in the population of meters, right? And so just off the top of my head, it seems like a very low percentage, and it seems like it's something that would be well within the guidelines or standards of a manufacturer's representations on failure rate or accuracy. Is that the same as your perception or no?
I think the answer, my perception would be no. Recognizing that, you're looking at 60, 80, you're looking at 90 some odd accounts, 91 accounts. Granted, out of 30,000, right?
Yep, 30 some thousand, 34,000.
Yeah. So I would fully agree that it's relatively low, but it's not what I would call, a meter, if it's working correctly and it doesn't have some intermittent problem, which is what I think we have here, you would expect that number to be very, very low, one less. So it seems like, but again, I concur with this. I concur with the staff that it's relatively rare.
Right. Where my mind goes naturally, because this agenda item obviously talks about the process, but starting with the meter, where my mind goes naturally is what would be the consequences, for example, of making assumption that every one of these meters is wrong and making a bill adjustment unless it is clearly proven that the consumption is used. I would love to have that information, because in other words, while we might be chasing a technical fix.
Steve, you're going exactly. I would just ask you to hold those thoughts, because I'm going to lay out a process where we need to have that conversation.
Hey, Ralph.
I'm just trying to get, sure, go ahead.
I want to point out something that when I saw this that jumped out to me. We're talking about accounts that had 100% increase. Correct. December compared to November. It's not a time period that there's something that happened in December.
Not a bad
Somebody needs to mute their phone, please, or their computer, please. You're bleeding over into the meeting.
Thank you. All right. I'm trying to understand. It's not like you're talking May when you turn on sprinklers compared to April when you don't. You're talking December to November. There's nothing that would dramatically change that would account for for doubling or more your water consumption. And then I also look at, this is only the 100%.
Correct.
How many was 50% to 100? Because let's be real.
Correct.
Who in here in December engaged in behaviors that made you use 50% more water than in November?
And Jimmy,
one of the go ahead.
Can I just correct this? 27 bills went up by more than 100%.
Yeah.
It's not just that they went up over 100%, right?
Okay.
Real quick, this exercise, real quick, guys, the exercise that ended up producing that presentation and then ultimately this slide was something that I asked for. And Mr. Davis, you're correct. I specifically asked, and it was October, November, and December. And so because we're out of the high consumption months due to sprinklers and those types of things. So I wanted to see it outside of that, which is kind of norm, right? And number one, that. Number two, I wanted to see just exactly how many And I just used an arbitrary number of 100% or more. There was no magic to that. I just said, I want to see who is doubling their bill or more. And then outside of this, I had asked staff, and it hasn't been done, but I had asked staff, now let's take that 100% and back it to 50%, which is where you were headed there, to see, again, how big or widespread, and then what types of common denominators are existent between these accounts, if any. And again, not knowing the accounts and not knowing who they are. I don't know, what type of.
And let me key on that, Mayor. Just a little tie on, and I'm jumping ahead, but based on what I've seen, in not only just in the post about people complaining about their water on Facebook, but also in my bill and Denise's bill, it would appear that what's interesting about this problem is it's not consistent. It's not, I can't see, I have a hard time finding a common denominator. There may be one, but it seems to be some type of either hardware or data communication issue, data highway concern issue, I'm not sure. Or it may be an arrangement flow issue that have to be above some flow threshold. But the point I make is I haven't been able to discern a conditional case where if you do these three things, this is the result you get. And the point I make is that in my meter, and I'll share in a minute, I get these high readings when I try to use the sprinkler that exceeds the capacity of the sprinkler. And when I don't do that, I've got a value that's very, very low, and I can consistently watch it, and I don't have a problem. And so it's like, what is going on here? And the point I make is this seems to go away. And my suspicion, I would love to get the data, that this is the population for this analysis period. I suspect there's a completely different group of users in other time frames. And I don't know that, but it seems to be that way.
So Ralph, if I can return on that, I agree. And again, from a data analysis, from a data capture perspective, if we had this data every month and we could track specific users here to see if there are repeat users or if it's completely random, and then find some way of taking a sample size of that data and beginning to isolate whether or not there could have been or actually was increased consumption. I'll give you an example that indicates to me why November to December is a really poor example time. I have two grown daughters in their 20s. And when my wife and I are at home, our consumption is minimal. And when my daughters come home in December, typically, my consumption, no question, would cause an increase of 100% in my bill. No question. And I don't think I'm the only one to have that problem. So some of this data, because it's from November, December, could very easily be caused by, especially in the low range there, very easily be caused by practical real life circumstances.
And I agree with you that this zone, those probably could possibly and potentially be real. I believe you. I only looked at, hey, how much of them went up by a substantial amount? I didn't take this big peak. I just took this tail. This is the tail that's interesting. Because I wouldn't expect this one. I wouldn't expect $400 increases.
Right.
Right? Well, let's stay on track. Let me go to the next slide. So, Facebook survey. This is a stethoscope to the community. I asked a survey. I asked, hey, in this group, are you in this group because of high water bills? I got 42 votes saying yes, and I have a pool and a sprinkler. I had 28 votes said yes, but I have no pool or sprinkler. I have 42 votes that said I have no bills, but I'm just doing this for awareness. I had 6 that said I'm worried about the 3230. I had 2 that said I don't have any issues. I don't know why they were there. I don't know why they're joining. But I had 120 responses out of a 1,200 membership Facebook group. So I'm representing about 10% of the group. Out of those 120, 70 indicated, or 58%, that they were concerned or had issues, they had issues with high bills. Okay? Additionally, Denise and myself are the two representatives that I've had problems with high bills. She's had problems with high bills. And Jimmy has communicated with a number of people that have reached out to him, and he's actually gone in and looked at some meter profiles and actual meter operations that tend to indicate that, hey, they had high bills. They contacted Jimmy through Facebook because they had an exorbitant bill.
Mhm.
Now, what are some of the
Hey,
comments? Sure.
Ralph, FYI, I never saw that survey.
Strange, because I put it out as a post.
Yeah, I participated on it. It's out. It's on that. It was some time ago.
Yeah.
A few months ago.
I totally missed it.
Give you some samples, and this is just communication. In Mayor Cole, I know you're on that group. You've seen some of them, I suspect. This is just literally just recent, last week. So one of them was, so my mother has been hit by the water pirates. She received a courtesy call to inform her they saw a spike in her usage to the tune of 95,000 gallons of water used. So the city caught it in the top 25. Thank you. Told her she had a leaking toilet. By the way, I'm an engineer. A leaking toilet is going to flow about 3 gallons a minute. How long does it take to fill the toilet tank up, right? It doesn't instantly fill up. It takes 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute. It's 1.5 gallons. You can't flow 95,000 gallons in a month through a toilet. Can't physically flow, impossible. They said they had 2 adults, 2 kids, under 6, no pool, no sprinkler. Absolutely ridiculous. Subsequent to that, they generated a plumbing receipt showing no leaks. It was in the comments.
To put a number to that, you're talking over a $700 water bill.
Another one, 32,000 gallons used, they said. Never in my 27 years living in Pearland have I ever had a bill that high. No leaks, no pool, sprinkler, yes, but seldom used. This is a systematic issue with either the meters, billing software, or just pure larceny of our hard-earned money. We can't wait months or a year for this to be resolved. Unrelated, I didn't put it in here, but there is lots and lots of communication discussions about finding a lawyer. So the challenge I think we have is we've got to reestablish this trust. And we've got to go through it in a way that is transparent and efficient, because clearly I agree here. If we can't let this keep going on. This is my bill. And, you know, old meter, new meter, I've only been in this house less than 2 years, coming up on 2 years. I do have a sprinkler, but I'm getting 43,000 gallons or $278 in water costs for this one. That covers my yard 10 inches deep. Can't be. Can't. I mean, I did water, but I didn't water 10 inches. Now, maybe it did, and I'm just can't. I'm getting ready to run an experiment, but I have pulled off doing it because I don't want to spend $300 trying to figure out what's going on here.
Right.
Huh? But it's very. I agree that I have a higher consumption in the hotter times, yes, but it's exorbitant. That says I almost had 1,400 gallons per day for 28 days. My normal usage is 80 to 100 for 2 people.
Ralph, can you press hide on that bar at the bottom of your screen? I can't see the date, so I'm having a hard time tracking.
Oh, excuse me. There we go. Yeah. By the way, these are read-in dates. This is when the reading got ended.
Okay.
Now, I've been tracking on every 2 or 3 days. I go out and take a picture of my meter. It only recently cleared out of error. It was in error literally for ever since I started looking at this when I got that $400 bill. So it's been doing it since September. I've been taking pictures. And only the read before last did it go off of alarm. I don't know what the alarm code is. I can't read it. I don't know what it is. But it went away and it went to 10
questions, Ralph.
Sure.
I don't know the meter you have. Is it a digital readout or analog readout? If you just look in your water meter.
Oh no, this is the new digital Badger E-Series. iTron. No, it's Badger. It's a Badger meter. It's a Badger meter, and this is a transmit time ultrasonic meter. And I'll go into that. I got a whole presentation about technology and what can go wrong. That's another meeting. Okay.
So, and again, just simply because I haven't seen a picture, I don't know what this looks like. When you look in a box, there's a digital readout that lets you, let's say you wanted to run a 24-hour experiment, right?
Yes.
Could you do that and collect instant data?
I can do that. I'd have to go out there and take pictures all the time. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but you could at a certain rate.
And one of the things I was going to do is I was going to go. My experiment that I haven't run yet was to go. It does give you a GPM reading. Okay.
Okay.
And I was going to go zone by zone on my irrigation and measure that GPM rating. And I know from my sprinkler system how many minutes it runs for each zone. And I was going to do a totalized flow using the instantaneous GPM that it gives me. And I was going to compare that to an integrated accumulated value and see if they match.
To me, that seems smart, right? You could even potentially cap one of your sprinklers and have a one sprinkler zone and collect the water.
I can. By the way, I did run a low flow check in that I ran 2 15 gallons per minute accumulated integrals. In other words, I filled a 15 gallon carboy with water out of the water hose at a slow rate, and it matched the meter.
At low flow.
But it's at a low flow.
Yeah.
You know, it seems on my part, I'm at a high flow, intermediate flow is where this thing's doing something. I don't know. And I've got some theories. I won't go into the theories. That's another presentation as to what potentially could be wrong. You know, now
was the meter an alarm when you were having bad months, Ralph, in terms of your bills?
Yes. As far as I know. As far as I know, yes.
We probably
someone else?
We probably need to move along if you're going to stay in your 30 minutes.
Okay. So here's my question. I'm looking for a consensus, and this kind of goes back to the discussion, and thank you, Mayor Coles, from the standpoint, you know, that Burger Dot is intended to kind of address this. Does the city have a citizen perceived issue with the current water metering?
Yes. Yes, I think there is a general. I think there is a general consensus or a general citizen perceived issue that there's. I mean, let me say this: that there is something wrong with our water billing, be it software, meters, all the above, whatever. Yeah. There is a trust issue, and that issue is real.
Does everybody agree with that? Is there any dissenters or questions?
Yeah, look, Ralph, it's a very general question, right? I mean, does the city have a citizen perceived issue with the current water metering? It would be easy to say yes, and it would be easy, again, based on the data that I'm seeing, to say that issue is de minimis.
Unless you're not one of those people that haven't hit their 100% yet, and have water bills, water usage on your profile that's unexplainable. And we have tripled our water budget at the Hewitt House.
I understand that, and therefore it would be easy to say yes, wouldn't it? But the reality is we're we're here to talk about a solution to the real issue or to the real problem, and solving perceived problems is a different process. That's all I'm saying. If you're asking, is there enough for the committee to keep working on this, then my answer is yes.
You know, that goes to my second question. Should this committee attempt to address this perception, real or not, in making recommendations to the city for a resolution path forward to reestablish trust and ensure metering?
Look, you have people up in arms. You have people that have, if you will, proven up that they have higher bills, and that it seems logically that they shouldn't have higher bills, and they're outspoken, and others have listened. So there's enough to work on here. Obviously, that's one of the main reasons the committee got formed, right?
So one comment that I have is that, you know, I believe that the solution needs to move. I think that we have the solution in place, or not in place. It's being worked on by putting the AMI implementation to where you can look at the water meter. You can see exactly, you know, this hours whenever you had a spike. So if that's the hour that your sprinkler system is set to run, maybe you can correlate that with you have a leak that you don't know about. I've had a high bill. You know, I know all about water meters and water, and I thought there's no way I use this much. I went out there and did the calculation, ran each one of my zones, and I was wrong. I used exactly that much. And so I think that the positions are in place, or the items are starting to get, they just need to be implemented faster than what they are. I think that needs to be the number one goal, is to be able to get that data out to the user so they know on this day you used 10,000 gallons. Well, what did I do that day?
And you know, and I think goes a long way to help, but the what I would like to discuss, and this kind of goes back to what I've kind of found out and looking at various ways to deal with this, and recognizing, you know, I think this is the highest priority thing that we've got in front of us other than 3230. I think there has to be some way to deal with this before you get full ITRON implementation in the portal done. And then additional to that, I think what this issue brings up clearly should have an impact and make changes to what the portal provides, is my point. The portal, and we'll go into that in just a minute. I'm just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, that this is in scope and we need to make some changes. I want to make an editorial comment based on what I've seen, and based on where I'm at. I think there's a path forward to deal with this issue on a systematic approach that can be understood by the citizens and can assist the staff in how to address such issues. There is a clear, relatively simple, I'm not saying it's easy, but a relatively simple approach to deal with this problem and move forward. And it's not unrelated to what you had already commented, Steve.
I believe, you know, my personal opinion is I don't know that it's in our scope to go back to find out what happened. It's in our scope to say if what the city's doing going forward, is that the path we want to take? You know, are they taking the correct path? You know, because we could beat it up forever. You know, the old meters, you know, didn't pick up a half a gallon a minute. These meters do. You know, there's the time that they were changed out, whatever was flushed, different things that are happening. You know, we could go back to what happened forever because we're going through a new process. If we were still doing the same thing, what happened? How are we going to fix it? I think that the items that are in the Raftullis report and other things that, you know, the other technologies that are being implemented are the goal to going forward there. So I don't know that going back to find out what's happened in the past is really what the charter was designed for us. I wasn't there when council discussed it, so if somebody.
Well, and I'm not from a retrospective analysis standpoint, I'm not so sure I really care who made what decisions or anything else, be honest with you. I'm just trying to get a way where my point is we have to be in a position to deal with these one-off, granted, only 65 residential accounts out of 30,000, only 65. And that's all fine and good unless you happen to be the one that got the bill. And how do we flag these and how do we deal with these failures? I'm going to use that word. I think it's a meter failure or a communication failure. There is a failure here. How do I deal with those failures? And there's a way to deal with that. I think.
Sorry, but until we find out that those 65 residential accounts, that all of them had issues with what happened, it's tough for us to give our opinion on it. I mean, of 65 people, it's not very many. Every one of them may have drained their pool and filled it back up again. So the number may really be 2 that had a problem.
Well, I guess maybe I'll volunteer my meter then. There are people out there that are beyond these numbers on this chart who are living this month to month. We are writing in a spiral binder every time we flush the toilet, every time we draw a glass of water, every time we get in the shower. I now got my shower down to about 4.5 minutes. I'm not even conditioning my hair. There are prime meters that people know they have issues with. I don't care. You don't have to go back and figure out when it, as soon as it plugged in, what's it doing and all that. Take it right now. Take it today. Study this meter. I've got profiles you can look at for the history of it. I don't think we wait for AMI.
Well, and my point is that these 2 examples that I post here, they're not hundreds, but there's a lot. And so it's not it's a one-off and it's only a few every month, but the few are the ones that are in that, and that's, the reality. Now, as an engineer, I look at this and say, how is it that this could happen? And let me tell you the fundamental difference between the old meters and the new meters, between a mechanical displacement impeller in the meter that turns a indexer that meets the pulse that or ties to a clock and runs the dial. That meter cannot fail high. It can only fail low. And the city rightly believed that when I change out all these 16-year-old meters, that the usage consumption is going to go up because the meters are underreporting the actual consumption on the aggregate. And that is probably correct. Yes, that's true. Can you expect that a new electronic, more accurate meter, more importantly, one that is a wide bore open without that, can I expect the consumption to be higher because I got a new meter? Yes. What is fundamentally missing here, though, it's an electronic computer microprocessor-based meter with a communication protocol to a mass storage device, computer device. Can it fail high? And the answer is a resounding yes. You can get electronic communication, floating decimal point registry overflows, all the things that go wrong with your computer that make you have to reboot it can go here. And the point I make is the systems that the city has had in place forever, rightly so, that evolved over time, was all about trying to recognize that it's probably underreporting. But fundamentally, these meters are different. Make sense?
It does. Ralph, let me make a category. Let me make a comment on that. And while I agree, it's not the committee's scope to go back necessarily and dive into what happened or what went wrong back here, but we do have new meters in place. We do have software in place. We do have all of this infrastructure. And if there is something fundamentally wrong, be it with 1% of the meters or 2% of the meters or whatever, and we can figure it out through some process, I think we have to give our citizens the opportunity to find that out and figure it out. If there's not something, and Ralph, I think you raise a good point. If it is designed to fail high, we need to know that versus designed to fail low. And I think those are interesting components that we need to know moving forward, and how do we address it, because it seems to be sporadic.
Oh, it is.
It seems to be sporadic. It goes into the overall perception, or whatever the narrative that's out there, that there is something wrong. Therefore, we have a problem on the PR side, and lack of trust. And when people get their bill, they open it, and they don't know if it's going to explode on them. And so I think it's important that we do that and figure that out and check that box, because either it's right or it's not. I'd like to know, Ralph, if there's a way to replicate what we're seeing in this system, because
I certainly would like to try. Now that's
right.
and I'm going to give you a little precursor to what my next presentation, if you'll allow me to do it. I don't think that's necessary. Oh, I want to try. Trust me, the geek in me says, well, we got in as the city of Pearland, we would have tried. Right. But my point I guess I'll make is it's kind of problematic a little bit. And I got 2 more slides. So do we all agree? Is there any dissension that this is?
I want to make sure that I validate that. I think having a discussion and figuring this out and making sure that we have, lack of a better term, we have checked the box on meters, that it's either right or wrong, or if there's a problem, we dive into it and figure out what it is, because they are in place currently. They are reading, there's water flowing through my meter probably right now. So we need to figure that out and check it off. And if there's something wrong, we have the ability to go in and try to figure out what it is and fix it. So
yeah. Any dissent that this is in scope?
No dissent that this is in scope. This is clearly in scope, Ralph. However, I want to go back to your question, your poll about consensus as to whether or not we have a problem here. You're not a paid expert in this situation, but my question on the table remains is if you assume every one of those issues on that chart was a failure, is that within the specification of the equipment? And so what I don't have is what is the specification of the equipment? We're talking about the old meters. And for example, are the new meters to be, installed? Do they have a different specification? This is
well, and that goes, and then let me tell you, that goes directly to the questions I put out to ask Badger.
Okay.
I don't know what their failure rate is. I would love to know.
All right.
And more, just as importantly, in that failure rate, what were the failures? What category were they? I don't know.
Because there's multiple problems here, so to speak, that are perceived, right? And yep. I think we're dancing around one potential solution, which is
you're going exactly to where I want to head. So just hold that thought. A little background a minute. This is me. I'm the geek. I've really recognized something that's kind of interesting. I just passed 51 years of working in engineering. I started in high school in a fluid dynamics lab at Baylor College of Medicine, working on an artificial heart project. I was one of those science fair kids. Since I've graduated, I've been working 43 years in this. I retired from LyondellBasell 8 years ago with 35 years service, and I was the principal engineering advisor responsible for basically mechanical integrity and process safety worldwide for LyondellBasell. It was my signature as to whether you could run it or not. So I'm a geek. I'm a subject matter geek. I've been consulting for 8 years. I got all kinds of experience and everything, but the point I want to point out is basically I do a lot of incident failure investigations, and I use Apollo root cause and a technique called Kepner-Trago. But this is what I do for a living, and people pay me lots of money, very expensive. I'm not a cheap guy, and to solve their problems. And this is very much within my skill set as to how do we approach this. And just as important, sometimes I've run into, and I'll share this in the next presentation, there's all kinds of ways to have failures. There's all kinds of ways to have issues. And certainly you want to go in and solve those issues, but sometimes you may not be able to do that. And so what do I do and how do I mitigate it? And how do I make sure that things keep running even if I have that problem? And that, I think, is where the city of Pearland is a little bit. Just a little sidelight, if you have a little fun, you go Google me. You'll find it kind of interesting. I do a lot of training, and I've established several methodologies that I train to people worldwide that have nothing to do with water metering, okay? My view, and I put this out here early on when we started, what's the search for the root cause? What are the issues? And we need to get an agreement as to what this list is. And that is part of the exercise that we will at some point need to do. It could be argued maybe we don't do it with the full committee, we only need a subset. It's certainly one of the challenges that I've noticed is certainly with the size and what we're dealing with, it's going very slow. But the point I make, delayed billing plays a role, 3230 plays a role, and this high usage question plays a role. In particular, the high usage and the delayed billing play important key. They're hand in hand, because if I can't get actual daily or hourly reads, it's going to be very, very hard to figure out what happened to provide the high consumption. And if we only flag those at certain times. And this goes back to the Badger question. Is anybody else seeing this problem? Is Pearland experiencing something that Albuquerque experienced and they figured out what happened and how to fix it?
You just have to Google that, Ralph. You just have to Google that. I don't know they have a fix because there's more issues out there than somebody saying hallelujah, right?
Yeah, but there are
San Diego.
Santa Fe.
Look, right up the road, League City, I've got the Post. They're having the same issue. I don't think they're using Badger. I don't know, but they're having the same issue. But the point I make, we've got to come to a consensus and agreement. And there is, using Apollo root cause, there's a way in which we can identify what the issues are. There is a whole secondary thing here. I'm not even going there right now. Is that important? Maybe. Do we choose to, is that in scope within the committee or not? We can discuss that when we get the list. But the point I make, there's got to be some reconciliation as to what are the potential issues and how do we go about addressing each of them. We're working on 3230. We're getting there. Certainly resolving 3230 should help get the delayed billing problem solved. And then the only question is how do I deal with the high usage if I get something reported? And there's a way out of the woods for that. It's part of the data reconciliation validation. But my proposal would be is we go through some exercise to do this. This might be, instead of doing it like we've been doing, this literally might be schedule a workshop. And we all come in with our masks and we all sit around the social distance between each other and we work through this. We can do that. Now, what are some of my view, geek expert to y'all? I've done a lot of consideration and research already. I think there's a path forward and there's some potential options. I'm working on preparing a presentation of what that looks like. And basically I'm going to show you how does meters work at a very high level. How can they go wrong? And what are the kinds of ways they can go wrong? And I'm going to talk about some of those. This technology is subject to those. And then I'm going to lay out, on a reliability fits, give a recommendation to the client. I'm treating you like a client. What are some of your options and path forwards you could pick? And they have pros and cons. And then if we can get an agreement as to which way the best go, then potentially we would propose some additional actions for the city staff in dealing with this issue. There are some things I think that can be done. A comment, editorial purely. I think the city of Pearland, and by extension the city staff, has been a victim of this issue along with the users. Y'all didn't sign up for it. The engineering department didn't know that this was going to happen. Certainly the billing didn't know that they were going to get erroneous meter reads, or what appears to be erroneous meter reads. And they had a system set up that wasn't designed to identify high consumption as an error. They were only looking for a meter that didn't work, low consumption. Certainly the corrective action, since this has kind of come up to flag the top 25 users, is helpful, but it would appear, based on the data that's been provided, that it's bigger than the top 25 users. It's very complex, it's very random, and it's over a small fraction of the accounts. And there's not always consistently the same accounts, as best I can see. What the root cause is may be very difficult to surmise. But I think there's a certain mitigating monitoring and actions can resolve this issue sufficiently to begin to reestablish trust and have assurance in the metering. There are some things the city can do to validate and ensure that the values that are being reported for the next billing cycle are correct. And there's a way to deal if it's outside certain norms, and deal with that in an open, honest way with the account holder. Certainly flagging the top 25 is a great start, but it seems to be a little bit bigger than that. And the point I make is, as long as you have this technology, I don't think that's ever going to change, because you're always going to have some relatively small random set of high failures, and you just got to deal with it. In city, it could be argued, depending on what they claim is their failure rate and what's an acceptable failure rate, you may actually have a warranty claim here in dealing with this back to Badger or to whoever. I don't know all the contracts and how that was worked, but it clearly looks like, from a customer, I'm talking the city of Pearland as a customer, from a project management standpoint, you got sold a technology that is not performing up to your expectations. That's just my opinion. So
if to wrap this up, Ralph, I'm thinking that's the last slide, correct?
That's the last slide. Yep.
Okay, so to wrap this up, are you looking for team members to give their thought on whether we have a consensus that we have a meter issue, that it's in scope, and it's valid to move forward in investigating root cause? Is that what you want?
Yeah, what I really want is make sure everybody is in agreement, and then if y'all will agree, then I've got another presentation to get everybody up to speed. And I think, and Ms. Massey, this is really directed to you. I think we can give you some input as to how to best deal with this, and with making some system changes, we can move forward with trying to provide some mitigation of this. At the same time, we probably, I'm guessing, we're going to go do a root cause failure analysis in some way or another. I think there needs to be, and this kind of comes back to maybe getting Raftillis back in the conversation to see how they would approach it, or if they know of somebody that can assist in this.
So I guess, team, to move us along, can we just take a poll on the team of whether or not we have consensus that there is a meter issue and that we're going to move forward with it within our team scope toward root cause analysis of sample meterings?
Yeah, Denise, I don't believe respectfully that that's the proposal on the table, because I'm not prepared to even give you my opinion on that. I would like the opportunity to digest. I appreciate what Ralph has presented.
Yeah.
I do not conclude immediately that there's a meter problem. I believe that there's a problem. but I don't know that there's a meter problem necessarily because I don't know the specifications. And Ralph, you said everything that I'm thinking, but you're moving in a direction that is different, I think, than the direction I'm moving, which is if I'm a customer, if I'm the city of Pearland and I buy a set of 35,000 meters, I'm asking a specification. How many of these meters are going to read outside of acceptable tolerances? And if the answer is 0.1%, then I better have a policy and a program in place to deal with 0.1% of my meters being problematic and either not being able to collect enough money or slamming customers with bills that are too high, right?
Right.
So what I'm trying to do as a business consultant is understand the size of this problem, because I ran the area under the curve that we presented here from the November, December data, and the money that we're talking about for residential meters appears to be less than $20,000 a month. I would like to know, for example, what percentage of that overbilling is that of the overall residential bills over the course of a month? And I would like to consider for myself, is $20,000 a month worth it?
Well, and I ran the numbers. I ran the numbers, and I got 26,000 for the ones that I flagged that were 150 and above per month. Yeah. Now, the challenge you have is my belief is this. I'm going to cut to the chase. I believe that this is going to be forevermore, and it really kind of comes down to exactly where you're headed. I'm just trying to make everybody go with the same way. I think you have to have a system to flag they're outside the statistical norm, and here's the policy for dealing with these incorrect bills. And I'm going to say this from a project management standpoint. My answer to that was if it gave me that high erroneous thing, change it out. Send it back to the manufacturer under warranty and give me another one and just be done with it. And now I would change the whole thing, because I don't know if it's the meter. I don't know if it's the communication data highway to the storage device. I don't know if it's the storage device. If from a city of Pearland, I don't think you care. Just change it out. Send it back.
Yeah.
But that means that the billing process has to do a data validation step, and it has to be a statistical one. Now, will somebody fill in their pool go outside that data? Yes. And what you do is you contact them and you say, hey, we saw how you usage this. Did you do something? Oh, I filled the pool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's acceptable. I don't have a problem with that.
So when I think about the committee and the charter and our work, what I think about is there's a series of recommendations that came from Ref Tellis. The city staff has reviewed those recommendations and agreed or disagreed, and are either implementing the recommendations or not, or are still working on it, right? When we look at this problem, because it is clearly a problem, again, I just don't know if it's a meter problem, there are probably 10 recommendations that this committee could make to help the process, right? And we've already talked about several. We've talked about maybe a more proactive maintenance process, swap the meter, right? We've talked about the need for a data center, a data warehouse, an ability to analyze data faster. It seems to me staff has a really hard time getting answers to certain questions because they've got to go through copious hours of manual labor to get an answer to a problem. Having a data warehouse might prove that. Imagine if we said, hey, I'd like to see that data, not November to December, but January to February. Would be really interesting to be able to push a button and get that data, wouldn't it? Because then we'd have a more complete data set and we could dig farther. If that's not in Ref Tellis recommendations, that ought to be a recommendation that the citizen committee makes, right? Yep, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of scope and work scope.
Well, so, and where I was trying to get is that, and you're exactly where my next presentation goes. Okay, you're exactly where. But and the issue that you have, and this is the it's a classic check engine light question, right? And I can have a check. Yeah, what's wrong? And I can't read the code as a user, But the same's true. Again, the system is set up for a data validation where a meter is slow under reports. This is clearly where you have a technology where you can get a very high reading, it would appear. And so, yes, and so I think that my point to make is that I've got a few options that you can lay out. You're exactly where I've pretty well settled on, is that you got to do some data analysis. You got to have a background of data, statistically analyzed data, to know whether this read is okay or not. And by the way, I think the portal should have that information. And it's no different than when I go to my Reliant Electric and I know that they track my electric usage based on the outside temperature, right? And so I can know when it's hot, and this is what my usage was, and this is what it was this week, this is what it was a year ago, this is what it was last week. I can see all those plots. And the point I make is there is a way to do a seasonal adjusted water consumption. There is. And use that value to report through the portal. This is what it is. And if you get a value outside of the 2 standard deviations, let's just say, of that data set, flag it, change the meter. Have a policy that says I bill them at the average of the lowest 3 months prior, something. I don't care. We can figure that out. But there's a way out of the woods here. There is a way out of the woods, but it's going to have to be a system change, and it's going to be a system change that's going to be there forevermore. I don't see it ever going away. But it's doable. It's very doable. And we tell the citizenry, this is what the issue is. This is what we're going to do. This is all fairness of what we're going to do. I think all the problems will go away. I think everybody will be happy with that result. Now, Badger's not going to like getting those meters back. I don't care. Let them fix them. Maybe they get enough back, they'll do something about it, or failure rate will go down. I don't know.
But at least the recommendations could be considered as they do their procurement contract with Badger, if it's not already done.
Yeah.
Patrick O'Day.
Yep.
This is Patrick O'Day. Sorry, I have to get on my telephone. I would like to, so if we want to get one of those meters, I have the ability in my office that we can put it in line with like a 5/8 meter, put it in line with the 5/8 multi-jet, several other meters that I have in stock, and run them through high flow, low flow test and whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and one thing I want to emphasize to you, this is my worry. My meter has a split T manifold with a quarter turn plug valve directly ahead of the meter.
Turbulent flow.
When they calibrate it, they stick it in a straight line meter test. Yep. I don't know if I'm getting an eddy shed flow maldistribution problem that's causing the intermediate flows and high flows to make the meter go crazy. I don't know.
Is that in your Badger questions?
Well, Badger specifically in the calibration procedure says that for the meters above the 5/8 size, that they require 10 diameters of straight pipe before the meter for the calibration. They don't require it for this meter. They don't require it for the small residential meter.
Right. Typical propeller meters, they require 7 to 10 times before and 3 times after.
Yeah. Well, in all meters should have 7 to 10 straight diameters before the thing. And I'm barely at that. I mean, but the other one is the higher the flow disturbance before the meter, the longer that takes. I've got 3 elbows, 3 left-hand turns, right-hand turns before it goes into the meter. And so it's going to take more than 10 diameters for flow equalization, given that disturbance.
Patrick, Ralph, let's go around and collect committee comments. Yeah. Patrick, did you? I love your idea, by the way. Makes me curious if the city has a calibration test set up where they can grab a meter from the field, bring it back, calibrate it with a known meter, and see if there's a problem. Would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Right. But Badger Meter says that this product is guaranteed accurate for 20 years. Which is a pretty strong statement to make if they're having issues.
Yep.
But I'm more than willing to, that we could put it in a test pit, with the known flow, 2 meters. We could do 3 meters, you know, one before, one after the Badger meter to check those calculations to see exactly what we're flowing into. And we can also do some other things. We can put a valve in front of it to close the valve. We can put a 90 on the other side of it. I don't believe that the turbulence is that big of a deal in this ultrasonic meters at these size, because it's doing more by velocity than it is by the turbulence, compared to like a turbine meter or multi-jet meter.
Yeah.
But I would be more than willing to set that test up, you know, and we can mess with it however we want to, above the limits, below the limits, and see what the hell the numbers end up turning out.
Yeah.
Can you,
You know,
Patrick?
I have talked to another client of mine that has 15 an investor-owned utility system that has 1,500 of these meters installed, and they have 0 issues.
Hey, Patrick, do you have the setup where you could take a meter and do a 15 gallon per minute for 2.5 hours?
Sure. I mean, I don't have it built, but it doesn't take me just a second.
Okay.
You know, the challenge I find is from a what seems to be just kind of random. You know, I don't know if it's a thermal temperature swing that's causing some solder joint on the chip to come loose just a little bit. I don't know. They call that a sneak failure, and it kind of looks like, from a just randomness standpoint, it may be one of those type events. And so the point I make is putting them on the test stand and checking the validation. Unless you can replicate whatever the failure mode is, I don't know. But it's a start. It's a good start.
But and I personally think that, you know, if I was installing these meters, if I was installing 35,000 meters and I had a faulty installation on 0.5% of them, I'd be a pretty happy business owner.
Yeah.
You know, so it could be an installation issue. They could be backwards. They could not have opened the valves all the way. They could have a leak at the right on the, you know, I mean, there's just certain other variables in this that, you know, at the numbers we're talking about in real terms, is that the numbers are acceptable. They're not acceptable to the individuals that are having the issues, but, you know, you'd have to have some sort of success at what point. I mean,
yeah. And I think from a standpoint is that I can't, you know, it's not from a workload standpoint. You know, you're not looking at a huge number of having to deal with them every month. It's not like 2,000 meters every month. It's 20, 50, 100 max.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's flag them. How do I flag them? And what is my policy to deal with the ones that get flagged?
All right, let me interrupt here because I've got to leave in just a few minutes. Jennifer, I haven't heard anything from you. I wanted to see if you had any thoughts that you wanted to share, observations. We can't hear you, Jennifer. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I apologize.
You're on.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Gotcha.
Can you hear me?
You're good. Thanks, Jeff.
I don't have any valuable input to say right now, but I am really impressed with what I was hearing and taking this all in and just kind of absorbing all the stuff that Ralph had just went over and some of the input that Jimmy, or not Jimmy, but Mr. O'Day had said.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Jimmy, we haven't heard too much from you. What do you have thoughts to add, share?
Absolutely believe this is an issue for anybody that has questions, whether they're meter issues. We can talk offline. I've got a mountain of stuff I can show y'all that there's no explanation. Closed businesses, half their water used is between 2 and 6 a.m. But nobody's there. There's no explanations for it. So I agree.
And
I would
Jimmy,
like to be part of the team.
Yeah, and Jimmy, those are the ones.
Conversations.
Those are the ones that we got to talk with Badger about. From a root cause standpoint, that is what I would call. See, that's data. That is, you know, that's a crime scene. How do I find out who did it? How can they explain that we're getting readings when there's no one there? It doesn't add up. And so that's the, we're going to need that. We're definitely going to need that.
All right, Denise, I am going to pass the baton over to you for the rest of the discussion session. Ralph, I want to thank you for your sharing and experience. That was the beginning of a really, really good conversation. And with that, I can already see emerging a set of recommendations, at least for next steps that come out of this. Maybe we compare notes as a committee over the course of the next couple of days and send thoughts on those recommendations as our SME. I appreciate you kind of collecting the questions for Badger and putting those in the folder already. And so I'll send my thoughts to you as a collection point. If the other committee members would do the same, I think that would be a good next step. And then we can begin to bring them together, aggregate them, and then share them as needed.
Well, and please send me, your thoughts and ideas of what you might want to do. I'm working on the next presentation, which is basically here's how it works. Here's how it can go bad. And then here's where your options are. And certainly if you can give me input in terms of options, what we think we might be able to recommend, bring them on and I'll compile them. Not a problem. And we're looking for that communication going on here.
Awesome. Thank you again. All Denise, right. Are you prepared to receive the baton and take the chair?
I'll do my best.
All right. I'll excuse myself. I appreciate everybody's patience with me.
Oh, absolutely. Have a good one. Okay. Let's, I think we're at that point right there. Agreed with caveats B, if I'm correct. Sorry, I'm flipping my papers. Okay, so let's look at recommendation number 5. Trying to flip my page. Sorry. Improve external communication plans for meter to cash activities. This was agreed with caveats, and do we know what the caveats were? I'm sorry, I'm scrambling, and I've got a really bad headache. I apologize. We talked to the meter to cash complexity. Neither customers nor many of the stakeholders involved meter to cash fully understand the complexity of the meter reading. Thank you for pulling that up. I don't even know if I can read it. It's recommendation 5. It's on page 24. Thank you. They also talk about the 3230 plan and the AMI implementation. Nancy, is there anything you want to pull out of this that you want to talk about specifically from your point of view? Am I on mute?
Yeah, no, I was on mute. Let me go and pull up my document on that first, but if you want to talk among yourselves, let me go and pull up my document on it too, because we have the staff response on that, so we can expand on that.
Okay.
There it is. There's the staff response. That's what thank you, Dara. So yeah, we agreed with the caveats on this. We created the 3230 plan from this. There's an animated video from this. You could read through what we have already on here on what this is. The caveats that we show on here is probably listed a little bit further down that we discussed. So with that is it says on the very bottom here, the staff reached out to the mayor and other stakeholders to refine this communications in utility building and associated processes. Change-in recommendations, changes to our approach will be forthcoming. We have been working on other ways of doing this as well. So that is the caveat. We're working through it. We're working through those as the caveats on the meter to cash flow activities with the staff with billing inserts, as well as the dashboard that we have created for the external dashboard that's up on there for the staff for the public to see as well. So that information's there for us as well. So that's what I meant by our caveats. We are doing more to it now.
Hey, Miss Massey, did any of what Raf Tellis put in go into the presentation on Monday night about the recommended changes to the utility billing ordinances?
Is that dealing with the meter to cash activities on recommendation number 5, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I noticed part of the communication on the recommended ordinance updates, housekeeping stuff. I think I saw a section about termination of services, notices. Has any of have the Raftelis recommendation suggestions been incorporated in what y'all presented to council, seeking for them to adopt? And is there any way, if y'all are recommending changes, would there be any value to running the changes to utility billing and utility ordinances as might fall within the scope of this committee, just so the committee can give some input, thoughts?
So the question is that if I'm understanding your question, is that you wanted the ordinances to go through the ad hoc committee first before they were presented to the council, sir?
No, sir. No, ma'am. So I guess
Okay.
it's first, did any of the Raftelis recommendations actually get incorporated into what was presented Monday night? Because some of it involves termination of services, how you notify residents. So I'm thinking that would fall under external communication plans for meter to cash activities. So that's part one.
Let me answer that part one first for you. So yeah, it's a little bit, so I can get that answer for you. No,
Yes, ma'am.
not that Raftil has made any recommendations on the ordinances on that respect. No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, the second part, was any thought given if we're making proposed changes to ordinances that might involve meter to cash, which pretty much is everything? Was any thought given to getting any input from the ad hoc committee who's dealing with the meter to cash and
Or maybe just,
trying to restore public trust?
or maybe even just sharing it, because I didn't watch council. I don't know if anybody else is in the dark about that as well.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to make recommendations while staff is trying to get council to adopt something now that might make us just be wasting our time.
The ordinances that we were changing, or not changing, there were housekeeping updates that needed to be made. Because if you looked at the ordinances online at municode.com as well as on the website, you notice that they went back several years and they didn't correspond to what was currently going on. So those were housekeeping updates that were being made.
Since I don't know what the scope of all of it is, Nancy, do you think it would be beneficial to spend just a few minutes at the next meeting just bringing us up to speed on that?
Yeah, we can do that. We can go look over the ordinances that was presented already to council on the quarterly update on February 22nd. I can present those again to you on that.
Okay, because I'm sitting here, I feel really flat-footed tonight. I'm sorry, I apologize to the team, because I don't even know what ordinance means. I mean, I know what ordinance, the word means, but in relationship to asking it to change, I don't even know what was there. I didn't know they existed, nor what they're changing to. So maybe that would just give us maybe a little bit fuller understanding of how I'm thinking ordinance are the rules in which you operate by. Is that correct?
The ordinances are what we operate by, that's approved by council itself. And as a matter of fact, the quarterly update that was done can also be found on the website through the agendas on the council itself. If they went to February 22nd and you go to utility billings quarterly update for as an agenda item, you can actually see the presentation itself and do that. It also talked about the Raftilis's recommendations as well. We pointed those out too, which one we agreed to, what we agreed to with caveats, and it's in there as well. So, you know, if you want, I'd be happy to shorten it and just look at just the ordinances that were brought forward that had to have the housekeeping changes, as well as there were some new ordinances that had to be put into place for the processes that we made changes to here in this office.
Does the team think that that's worthwhile, just to educate ourselves on it?
I do.
Anyone else?
I mean, it can't be bad information to have.
I kind of think it's foundational information, right? So that as we're going through this, it just gives us another view or slice of which to filter information through. So if you don't mind, Nancy, it doesn't have to be anything incredibly elaborate, but just to really, because I don't want to add to your workload. I'd much rather you work on the 3230 financials.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? So if you can just throw a slide up that you used at council, if there's something quick in just like 5 minutes, you think? Does that work?
Yeah. I'll take my February 22nd quarterly review that was given to council that's up on the website. I'll just pull out the ordinance piece of it, and I'll show that. I'll present that to you guys next ad hoc meeting.
Okay, good enough. Thank you very much. Okay, so back to recommendation number 5. Are we comfortable with this recommendation as it's written with the city's caveats?
I'm satisfied.
Thank you, Ralph. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, hearing no comments. Can we get an acceptance with an aye? And then we'll go for the nays after that. All in favor of accepting recommendation number 5 as written, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Hey, Denise, I have a question. Does this mean that we will not be able to make any future recommendations on external communication plans?
Jimmy, I would suspect, my belief is that in view of what we just had previously, I think there's going to be some communication recommendations eventually. So I would say that I think the door's still open to make some communication recommendations, in my opinion.
Making communication recommendations in i.e. topics in which to communicate on versus the manner in which they're going to communicate them. I think that's the difference here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy.
No, you're correct.
It's not going to stop us from giving them topics in which to communicate on. This is the methodology in which they're going to be communicating. Okay, so given that, any comments?
Call for a vote.
Yep. Are we in favor of recommendation number 5? Here, I'll give you another one. Would we like to recommend adjourning until we have time to go back through these and prep ourselves again, because we've kind of been offline with them, and be prepared for them? I guess Monday will be our next meeting.
I think that we can approve it.
I would
just put it in, it's approved, but then notate that additional information may come, or additional requests may come of this item as more information is given.
Right. Okay. All right. Given that from Patrick, do we have an approval for recommendation number 5 as written with an additional caveat from the team that as the team continues to meet, there may be additional requirements identified?
How many committee members do we have on?
Well, let me look at the participants list. We have myself, we have Jennifer, we have Jimmy, we have Ralph,
I'm the 6613.
Okay. 2817 ... 13.
Yes, ma'am.
Patrick.
So we have 5,
Mm-hmm.
and charter requires
6.
at least 6 votes. So we
Okay.
can't vote.
Well, let's go home.
Yeah, at this point, we can't vote on anything.
Yeah, because we're missing Mark and Steve.
Yeah.
Before
Okay.
we adjourn, I'd like to ask the question of when do we expect to get the financial data that we've requested?
Nancy can answer that, but
Yeah.
when I spoke to her the end of last week, I guess it was Friday, Nancy, you committed to sometime the week of the 15th. So maybe that's Thursday.
Yeah, and we're going to go ahead and get better clarification on it, because we've had the issue of not only John's departure, like Chairman Sabot has indicated, as well as the freeze has put a week delay on a lot of things we were trying to accomplish and get that information out. It is taking manual time to do and pull all that information. It's not as like Chairman Sabot said, it's not something we have a data depository to be able to pull all that. So it is taking us some time to do what we have to get done on it. So we are working as best we can. That's the best outline I have at this time. That date may end up changing, but we're trying to meet that deadline of what we said to you and what John indicated to y'all, which was the week of the 15th.
And I know that I don't have to say this, but I have to say this, right? We're in budget cycle, and this was the number one priority that we were handed out. And I know that it probably is not the number one priority of utility billing or the finance group, but I don't know how or what we need to do to place it within a priority where people that you're depending upon may be able to pick up more of the lion's share to help with that. I think that's something that Steve and I could try to help you with if we knew what to do, if we knew what to say.
Let me clarify by this way. Their lion's share is not the issue. It is being distributed out to the internal stakeholders that need to be working on it. And they are doing that.
Do they have a sense of urgency? Do they understand the urgency of it?
They do understand the urgency of what you're looking for. But you also hit the nail on the head too when you're saying that we're in the middle of budget. So in order to get some of the information we're looking for, we also have to wait for other information to come in. And so in order to do what we have to get done, we're trying to finish up something faster so that way we can accomplish what we promise y'all to have as well. So we're trying to meet that timeline.
So on the 18th, do we try to put together, if we don't have the financials, do we try to put together a straw man that says, this is what we think the plan should be? We give them a 10% discount for 30 days. You write off the accruals. Everybody pays what they owe. Is that good enough? We don't have any numbers.
I think so.
I'm sorry?
I don't know how you give that until you know the number. Because
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
A lot of what
the problem is we don't know when we're going to know the number, and we have to make a decision. So I think it comes to a point we have to just say, look, we don't have the information we have, so let's make the best decision possible. We know December, January, and February are the lowest consumption periods. So if there's ever a time to say city needs to absorb it, this is the time.
And then they'll need to figure out what to do with their falsely inflated accruals.
Yeah. Because there's 2 months of base charges that they're going to have to write off.
Right off, right?
Yeah, my
So-
position is that if we have to make a decision without that information, that all of it should be forgiven, and let's move on. It's just where I'm at, because we don't have to make another decision.
Unfortunately, Raftella said that if we did a total forgiveness, that we're going to turn around and get a rate hike. So if we could find that balance somewhere, because I know I certainly don't want to pay more for my water.
We don't know we'll pay a rate hike. There's questions about how much is in reserves. So and again, it was brought up a few weeks ago about the error and omission insurance that we've not heard anything back. They were going to talk to the city attorney about it. We haven't heard on that, but that is a revenue source. And this absolutely error and omission insurance applies when you have residents who receive services, and because of the decision to go to 13 meter reads a year, they receive free services and the city didn't collect.
So who took the
12 months
action
of
item
payment.
for the error and omission?
I believe we have an answer on that already. I believe there was an answer on that already, but I'll look into it before I continue on that. That's what I've been looking for right now.
Okay, because I don't know that we heard it here.
Okay, and that's possible as well. So let me look into that and see if, because I remember seeing information on that. So,
Okay, so you'll take that as an action, Nancy?
I'll take it as an action item here for y'all.
And whenever our next meeting is, if the city attorney says no, I would really like him to be on here so we can discuss that.
Okay, I'll put that into the action item.
Okay, Patrick's scooting in about, 7-8 minutes. Can we talk about next Monday, meeting next Monday? Is that a good date for everybody? 4 to 6?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. That was you, Jen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Jimmy, is that good for you?
I would have to check my calendar. At this point, the only thing we're really going to be able to discuss, I guess, would be what? The recommendations?
Raftella. We can knock the rest of the Raftella.
And I can be ready with the next presentation about how this works and what our options may be.
Nancy, does next Monday work for you?
Next Monday, the 8th? Yes, that works.
Does that matter if there's a city council meeting? Is that right?
Nope.
No. They
No.
met this past Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the next meeting after that will be on the
Right. Okay.
Mondays are pretty tough for me, but I can be in and out on the phone as much as I can. Because I got a pretty full week all week next week. And then remember the week of the 15th or whatever that week is, spring break.
And that's one thing I was going to ask. I'm glad you brought it up because I'd asked Steve how much of an impact that was going to be the week of the 15th.
I'm out of town from the 13th through the 18th.
Is anybody else off? Is anybody else missing the week of the 15th?
I'm available that week. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's just Patrick and everybody else is available and shows, we'll have enough members to have a meeting.
You're also missing right now, but you're also missing right now, Steve. And so you want to check with them first?
Yeah, I'll send
it. Discuss it on Monday, no? If we're going to meet Monday, the 11th?
Yeah. Yeah. So that means we need to put an agenda together tomorrow, Nancy, right? Before 4?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying that you want your next meeting to be on Monday the 8th?
Yes. And can you ask Roth, tell us if they're available since we're going to be slamming on theirs? And we'll do
Yeah.
them up front. And if we have time to go to the meter presentation, we'll cut them loose.
Okay, and also you wanted to give me about 5 minutes on the housekeeping ordinances that updates that we've done.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'd like to see us cover 3.B, 3.C.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. 3B and 3C.
correct.
Got it. So if I have it down correctly, we're going to talk about the housekeeping ordinances that we put forward. The Raftillis recommend, you want Raftillis on there so they can be there to discuss it, as well as y'all want to discuss 3B, 3C, and Mr. King will be doing a presentation. And Mr. King, did you want me to name your presentation, sir?
It just put continuing technical discussions on metering.
Yes, sir.
And of course, we'll need agenda items 4, 5, and 6 on it.
Yeah, we keep the same structure. We just kind of know what we're going to talk about. Because Ralph actually falls underneath the infrastructure on 5. Okay. Any questions? All right. Are we good to call it? All right. Let's call it at 5:49. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your
Thanks,
participation.
Denise.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, y'all.
Even to it.
All
Good
right.
night.